Hello everyone, hope you're good. All right, our lecture now will be on equilibrium in the economy. So let's get to it. So there are certain concepts we need to know about before we proceed. The first thing we need to know about is aggregate demand, AD. What is aggregate demand? This is the total demand for final goods and services in an economy at any given time. This is demand for gross domestic product of a country. Okay, so AD is C, which stands for consumption. I, which stands for investment. G, which stands for government spending. And X, which stands for exports, minus M, which stands for imports. Okay, right? So you do that, and then you get aggregate demand in the economy. All right, so very easy. How about aggregate supply? Aggregate supply is the total supply of goods and services that firms in a national economy plan on selling during a specific time period. So it's the total amount of goods and services that firms are willing and able to sell at a given price level in an economy. Okay, so total supply of goods and services as opposed to total demand. So aggregate supply is total supply of goods and services in the economy. Aggregate demand is total demand for goods and services. So remember our microeconomics, demand and supply. Here we go again. So when do we have equilibrium in an economy? Equilibrium in an economy occurs when aggregate supply equals aggregate demand, or equally, equilibrium in an economy occurs when planned injections equal to planned withdrawals. So when aggregate supply is equal to aggregate demand, or when planned injections are equal to planned withdrawals, we have equilibrium in an economy. So if you remember this was the simple circle of flow. So remember we said in an economy we have two components. You have firms and you have households. So this make up the economy. Okay, you might ask, where's the government? Where's the government? We'll get to that in a bit. So yeah, firms, what they do is they go to the households. They're like, hey, households, you own all these factors of productions, rent, labor, capital, entrepreneurship. Okay, so households provide factor services to the firms, all right? And then what the firms do is they make goods and services, this output, and then they turn around and they sell it to to households. Okay, so firms make goods and services, sell it to the households, and they have to pay, right, for the factor services, the ones they've taken in the first place. Okay, so they have to pay for entrepreneurship, for land, labor, capital. So they pay for all the factor services that they've used in producing all these goods and services. And what do households do? Well, households also, after consuming these goods and services from the firms, they have to pay for consumption. So they buy all these goods and services, and that's your circular flow of income. Now, if we expand that a little bit, we get this. Okay, so this is what we just showed on the previous slide. We can expand that. Okay, we can have injections into the economy. Okay, so what are injections? These are ways by which expenditure or money, if you want to keep it simple, okay, or which we inject life into the economy. All right, so these are ways in which we stimulate economic activity. All right, maybe by investment. Okay, so firms, households, firms from abroad can invest. The government could spend. right? So with government spending, we're getting some injections into the economy, or we export. So think about it: when we export goods, say we export to China, they have to pay us, okay? So that becomes an injection into our economy. How about withdrawals? These are leakages, ways by which economic activity or is reduced, or money leaves the economy, if you want to keep it simple. All right, so these are ways by which we're having some sort of leakage from the economy. Right, if we look at it, maybe savings, or when people save the money that we should have used to go around in the economy, they should have gone around from one firm to another, from the household to another, or between firms and households, leaves. When it's taxation as well, so say I earned 100 quid, I should have spent it, but my tax this year was maybe £10. Okay, so that money won't be in the economy, it's going to be withdrawn from the economy. Also, import spending. So when we import from abroad, we have to pay that country or the firm in that country that we have imported from. So it leaks from our economy, money leaks from our economy, and then we have to pay, or it's an injection to the other economy. All right. So this is the circular flow of income in a four-sector economy. And we can expand that a bit, and we can say, hey, government comes in here, right? Government taxes. Okay, so they might spend on certain goods and services. All right, the government can maybe produce certain things, maybe like the NHS. Okay, the government could also tax at some point as well, tax us, and then the rest of the world too, in terms of exports and imports, the rest of the world will also engage in trade with us. Okay, so you can see how the government comes in and how the rest of the world also comes in. Now, like we said, injections into an economy consists of things like investment, government spending, and exports. Okay, injections are assumed to be autonomous. We mean independent from national income. So it doesn't matter how much your national income is, you can get investment from abroad. The government could decide to spend, maybe they borrow some money too from abroad, or maybe if you export, money would come into your economy. Okay, we can illustrate injections into an economy this way as well. So we have injections here on the vertical axis. We have output and income here on the horizontal axis. Okay, now what makes up injections into the economy? So we can just denote injections by the letter J. J for injections. Okay, J, injections. What makes up injections? Investment. Okay, government spending, exports. Okay, we sum that up and we get J. So how do investments come and make injections into the economy? Because anytime we invest, we're stimulating. Okay, so we're putting new funds into the economy. Every time the government spends, it's putting new funds into the economy. And when we export, say we export to China, for instance, okay, then they have to pay us. Okay, so it's new income coming into our economy. So these make up injections into the economy. Okay. Okay, if you just want to make it a bit more practical, we could look at the government spending in the UK between 2013 and 2014. Okay, we could look at the sectors where the government injected some investment or some sort of money stimulus into. All right, social protection, personal social services, industry, agriculture and employment, health there taking a good chunk, transport, education, defense, housing and the environment, public order and safety, debt interest for previous loans, and then just other miscellaneous. Okay, so you can just make it a bit practical that way. How about withdrawals from the economy? Withdrawals from the economy are not autonomous, all right? So savings, for instance, okay, tax, imports, these all depend on how much we earn. You can't Save if you haven't earned. You can't tax somebody who hasn't earned. You can't import and pay for your imports if you haven't earned. So withdrawals are assumed to be dependent on national income. And then we have it here. We've drawn this graph showing that. So we have our withdrawals once again on a horizontal axis, output on vertical axis, and we add our savings, our tax, and our imports. We denote that all by W, and we have that line there that's sloping and going high, sort of like your supply curve. Okay, so here we are. We said equilibrium in the economy occurs where aggregate demand is equal to aggregate supply. So where AD is equals to AS, or where planned withdrawals are equal to planned injections. So remember we said what makes up withdrawals, savings, tax, and imports. Injections are made up of investment, government spending, and exports. All right, let's talk about equilibrium in the economy. Okay, so if we have a graph where we plot our injections and withdrawals on the vertical axis against our output and income on the horizontal axis, we said we could denote our injections by J, remember, and our withdrawals by W. We said our injections were autonomous of national income, so they didn't depend on national income. So you have that straight line there. When you sum it up, when you sum your exports, your government spending, and your investments. Okay. Now we said W, on the other hand, withdrawals would depend on national income. So we have this here. Okay. So taxes, savings, okay, imports, right? Depends on your income. Now we have this place where they meet right in the middle, and that, ladies and gentlemen, is equilibrium. Okay, so that's what we've been looking at, right? So that's where we want to get, okay? But it's possible for us not to be there. For instance, it's possible for us to be here, for instance, okay? Where planned injections are greater than planned withdrawals. Okay, now what's going to happen in that case is withdrawals are obviously too low, demand will be too high, firms will need to increase outputs, okay, incomes will rise, and withdrawals will rise. Okay, withdrawals will rise all the way until we get to this J, this injection part that we're at. Okay, how about on the other hand if we're here? Okay, how about if we're here? Okay, obviously planned withdrawals in this case are greater than planned injections. Okay, withdrawals are greater than injections. So what's going to happen in this case? Withdrawals are too high, so demand is too low because withdrawals is too high. People are taking out all the income, all the spending in the economy. All right, so output will fall, income will fall, and withdrawals will have to fall until we get to our planned withdrawals, which is equal to our planned injections. Okay, so this is how we get to where we are in the graph. Okay, the key thing to remember is we're only at equilibrium when aggregate demand is equal to aggregate supply. So aggregate demand is equal to aggregate supply, which is our output here. Okay, and planned withdrawals are equal to planned injections. Okay, so planned injections and planned withdrawals is what we have here. When planned injections are greater than planned withdrawals, there's too much demand in the economy. Firms will increase their output to meet the higher levels of demand. When planned withdrawals are greater than planned injections, there's too little demand in the economy, and firms will reduce their output. So what can the government do? Okay, how can the government respond to this? Okay, we have two ways. We have the reflationary policies. Some textbooks will say these are expansionist policies. It means the same thing. So what's happening in this case is the government is trying to increase the level of aggregate demand in the economy. So expansionist, We're trying to expand the economy, reflationary policies. Okay, so if planned injections are greater than planned withdrawals, there's excess demand in the economy, national income will rise until equilibrium is restored. On the other hand, like we've shown, if planned injections are less than withdrawals, there's too little demand, and national income will fall until equilibrium is restored. What can the government do? Simple. To expand the economy, what we can do is we can increase spending on goods and services, or we can reduce tax to increase the incomes of customers and firms. Okay, so if we reduce their tax burden, they will have more money to spend. All right, so it increases their real income, okay, as opposed to their nominal income. All right, so nominal income will be, say for instance, you earn £100, that's your nominal income, but if your tax rate is say 20%, then your real income is only 80 quid, right? So what we could do is we could reduce your tax rate, okay, so that your real income would increase. If we reduce your tax rate to say 10%, your real income would now be 90 quid. All right, what else can the government do? We can reduce interest rates to make it cheaper to borrow. All right, so if we reduce interest rates, more people will go and look for mortgages, more entrepreneurs will go out there and seek for loans to start businesses, and the economy will expand. Now, if you remember this word in your basic economics, it's called the multiplier. So what's the multiplier? The multiplier measures, all right, how expenditure on final goods and services in the economy would increase based on our marginal propensity to consume domestically. All right, so we know what aggregate demand is. We say aggregate demand measures the total planned expenditure on final goods and services in the economy. So we said it's the sum of consumption, investment, government spending, export minus import. So this will give us our aggregate demand. Okay, now we know that if we increase aggregate demand in the economy, we should be expanding the economy, right? So we should be expanding the economy. Expansionist policies. All right, but with our multiplier, okay, we can actually increase the economy in ways beyond which we actually expanded the economy. Okay, so we put in certain amounts in there, but we can increase the economy by more than that, basically. All right, so the size of the multiplier depends on the marginal propensity to consume domestically. You can go to my previous video on the multiplier in microeconomics to get this concept more intuitively. Okay, so this is on a bigger level, but it's the same concept. All right, so we can illustrate reflationary policies on a graph. Okay, so we can express our aggregate demand on vertical axis here, and we can express our output and income on the horizontal axis right here. Okay, so we have this beautiful graph, and we can look at it and we can see what the relationships will be. Right, so if we have normal or optimal aggregate demand, so that's what it should be like, 45 degrees to the axis. That's what aggregate demand is equals to aggregate supply there is equals to income there. So we have that. Okay, but realistically, most economies are like this. All right, what we have in AD1. So most economies are like this, right? Why are they like that? Well, because what happens even if we're not earning anything, okay, even if our output or our income is absolutely zero, people would still demand, right? Even if they're not producing anything, even if income is absolutely zero, people would still demand at this point where income is zero. How would they be able to afford such demand? They could maybe spend from their previous spending and savings, or they could borrow, okay, from the bank or whatever, but they would still demand. That's how human nature is. All right, so this is where we are. All right, now imagine that the government gets into some kind of reflationary policy. Okay, so they try to stimulate the economy. All right, So they increase aggregate demand here, right? So aggregate demand is increased to this new point on 82. Here we are, okay? Now what's going to happen at 82? Look at where we are, 82. This is our new point now. Now what's interesting about this? What's interesting about this is look at the increase in aggregate demand. Look at how much the government has stimulated the economy by. Okay, let's say that's 300 billion pounds. Okay, let's just put that there. But look at how much the economy is actually grown by. Okay, look at the total outputs, the increase in national income, increase in national output. What do we have? It's much bigger than this. So look at the size of this and look at the size of this. You can see it's bigger. So maybe let's just say for argument's sake, it's 1.2. So maybe 3 times what, 4 times what we've done there. Okay, depending on the size of the multiplier and the marginal propensity to consume. So what do we have? We've actually increased aggregate demand by this amount, but output has increased by more than that amount, by this amount here. Okay, and that is what we mean by the multiplier effect. So once again, I'll just explain what the multiplier effect is so we get that more intuitively. So what we're talking about when we say the multiplier effect, we're explaining how an initial increase in planned injections into the economy increases national income by more than the initial increase. So it explains how an initial increase in planned injections into the economy increases national income by more than the initial increase. So say we increase national income by, well, let's just say 300 billion, okay? But the final increase, okay, into the economy, okay, is greater than this initial 300 billion. So the total increase at the end of the day might be, say, 1.2 trillion, okay, right? So that's what we mean by the multiplier effect. So what we had in the previous slide was we increased aggregate demand by something like that, and output increased by more than that, right? Okay, so that is an example of the multiplier effect. So the national income is increased by more than the initial increase. All right, the size of the multiplier depends on the marginal propensity to consume domestically. Okay, what is the marginal propensity to consume domestically? This is how much of our incomes do we spend in our own country. Okay, so if I get a pay rise of say £100, for instance, how much of that new £100 do I spend on domestic goods? Why? Because the bigger the marginal propensity to consume domestically, the bigger the multiplier. So if I spend £70 out of that on British goods, or wherever I'm from, right, I'm using more of that money in that economy, so the increase will be more. The amount of money that would go around in that economy would be more. So in other words, if the tendency of companies and households to spend their incomes in their own country is high, initial income would be multiplied by this multiple expenditure. Okay, so everyone would be spending in their own country, and we would have this multiplier effect. Okay, so multiples of spending in our own economy, so multiple expenditure, and hence the term multiplier effect. Okay, what's your class activity for this week? You should go and find out what happens if planned injections are greater than planned withdrawals in the economy. So what happens if planned injections are greater than planned withdrawals in the economy? Question 2, what happens if planned injections are less than planned withdrawals in the economy? Okay, 2, what happens if planned injections are less than planned withdrawals in the economy? Okay, you can find this in any textbook. I would recommend you go and look at the Foundations of Economics textbook by Andrew Gillespie, or you can just look in any macroeconomic textbook, or maybe look online, look for online resources on the web. So once again, what happens if planned injections are greater than planned withdrawals in the economy? And what happens if planned injections are less than planned withdrawals in the economy? Thank you very much. Have a good day and see you later. Bye for now.